Well, a warm welcome along to the Sweet Spot, sponsored by SBK. I'm Warren Ashurst, and James Mason is with me this week to replace Steve Palmer as he is getting a well-deserved break. And we're here to preview, of course, this week's action. And we'll be looking ahead to the tournaments in a moment or so's time. But James, firstly, how are you? How's the golf?
Yeah, not too bad. I think from the last time I was on here, it was a long time ago now, a few months at least, but I've joined a golf club again, got back into it, not playing very well, but yeah, it's taken its time to try and get back into the swing of things. But yeah, I'm trying to get, to be fair, I'm trying to get some more shots onto my handicap to make to make myself more competitive.
So there's obviously a reason behind your bad golf then, if that's the case. We shall talk more golf, of course, very shortly. But just to give you a reminder that all new SBK users will get £40 in free bets when they sign up and bet £10 for the first time, and head to SBK for lots of other offers and promotions throughout the weekend. Full terms and conditions apply. 18 plus. BeGambleAware.org. We will be, as I say, looking ahead to this weekend's action very shortly, but we have to look back firstly at what happened last week, of course, and we'll start with the PGA Tour, where Charles Schwab Challenge was won by Ben Griffin. Looking at the leaderboards, James, it was a pretty tight affair for the majority of the week between himself and Matthias Schmid, the German, falling just a shot behind the American winner in the end. Scotty Scheffler back in a tie for fourth at 8 under par, but Griffin probably wasn't high up, I would suggest, on many people's lists last week.
No, I don't think so. I think he's sort of going in under the radar because he's already won on the PGA Tour before, but that was a team event. So this is his first individual title. So, give credit for getting over the line. And what was a difficult last round, I think the conditions were tough for them. Scotty Scheffler, it was a second round really that sort of pulled him away from everybody else. But obviously he did well over the weekend. Another good performance from him. But yeah, fair credit to Griffin. He just managed to hold on a 1 over par final round. Matty Schmid, 2 over par. I think they'll be a little bit disappointed. Maybe it was the pressure getting to them, and then the chasing pack was starting to close in a little bit. But yeah, give credit to Griffin. He's got over the line, and who knows, that could be that little boost that he needs to go on to the next level.
Yeah, just a quick word on a couple of the others. We mentioned Scotty Scheffler tied for fourth. Rounds of 68, 71, 64, and 69. He'll look back at that second round in particular, James, and think he'd only got in the 60s then. We could have been seeing Scheffler in the winner's enclosure again.
Yeah, and it just again, it's his level of consistency at the moment. There was a few people sort of thinking, well, why has he agreed to play in this tournament? But he loves playing golf. He doesn't seem to get sort of burnt out or anything like that. And when the iron's hot, you just need to keep playing like he is. Yeah, very very dangerous player at the moment. You do suggest that the third major of the season is something that he'll be looking mostly at to try and win. But yeah, Scheffler again, very good from him. Tommy Fleetwood was another one I kind of looked at
Yeah.
again. For Fleetwood, I get a horrible sense though that he's going to be a player that might not win on the PGA Tour. I think he'll keep putting in these good results, but he just doesn't seem to have that extra level. And obviously, he's a quality player, won on the DP Tour many times, but it's just when it gets to the nitty gritty when it comes to these US tournaments, and it's always the putting for me that lets him down. He's a very good putter, but the amount of times you see it skirting past the hole or just
Mm.
missing, he doesn't quite make those birdies when he needs to. And yeah, although it's a confidence boosting performance from him, I just wonder if he's just going to be one of those players that just can't quite get over the line.
Quick mention as well for Robert McIntyre, who's refound some form as well. He finished in a tie for sixth at 7 under par, and that included a third round 64 as well. With one eye on the Ryder Cup at the moment, it's good to see those players who we'd have ordinarily said at the start of the year, James, would have been almost a gimme to be in the team.
Yeah, I think McIntyre, yeah, it is good for him because he just started to go not off the rails, but some slightly disappointing performances. But that's a good one for him to get back into the swing of things. I mean, I tell you what, the European Ryder Cup team, it's going to be very difficult, I think, for Luke
Mm.
Donald to pick his 12. Obviously, they've got the qualifying thing is slightly different now, isn't it? Obviously, got the six top ones, but then he's got six captain's picks. But I mean, who does he go for those six captain's picks? Because he's got loads of players in there at the minute that are playing well. You've then got the likes of Justin Rose, who did well at the Masters.
Mm.
So I don't envy Donald having to do these picks because there's a lot of players at the minute that I think are throwing their hat into the ring.
Yeah, although better having too many than not enough potentially for what would be a tough test, of course, across the Atlantic later this year. Talking of crossing the Atlantic, we'll go from the PGA Tour to the DP World Tour, and it was Norway's Christopher Retan who claimed victory in the Soudal Open. That was courtesy of a final round 62. It was a roller coaster for Retan. 71 first round, then 66 in the second round, 72 in round three, and then a 62 in round four to eventually win a playoff over Darius Van Driel and Ewan Ferguson. I mean, watch some of this last week, James. Got a feel for Ewan Ferguson. He was playing some brilliant golf. Final round 71 has just cost him in the end.
It has, but again, that's the slight concern, isn't it, for you and Ferguson? He would have expected himself, I think, to get over there, and having already, tasted success before, you thought, right,
Mm.
in that situation, final round, you think he'd be able to do it, but he just got drew back into that playoff, and yeah, couldn't get it done. I mean, Darius Van Driel, he barely turns up Van Driel, but then that type of course, short, tree lined,
Mm.
accurate tee to green, he's just one of the most perfect people for it. Obviously, he didn't get over the line; it was a right 10 in the end. But again, you've got to give huge credit to go out there and shoot a 62 on the final round, 9 under par, to put yourself into contention and get into the playoff, and then manage to get over the line. Yeah, could be a good future for him.
I haven't actually seen the prices prior to last week, but I imagine that Retan was a very big price indeed to come out on top, and he eventually won via a playoff. A couple of other things of note to maybe look at in terms of the finishing leaderboard at the Soudal Open. James, John Parry and Jordan Smith, the two Englishmen, tying for fourth on 10 under par. And if you go a little bit further down the leaderboard, we see the likes of Andy Sullivan making an impact and Alex Fitzpatrick as well, tied 11th finish for those two Englishmen, and a steady week all round.
Yeah, steady week. Good to see that they're doing well. Again, we mentioned the Ryder Cup, but none of those players will be in Ryder Cup contention. But I think, yeah, you've got to give credit for them for playing as well as they did. John Parry, it's a good success story for him, isn't it? Because he won years and years ago, and then he had a huge gap, and then he managed to win a couple times recently. It was the back end of last year, the start of this year. So yeah, it's good to see him back into the swing. He went off the boil a little bit with a few of his performances, but that's maybe you weren't surprised to see that after he got the victory. So yeah, I think it's good to see them up there. They're regular. They're your DP World Tour regulars now who'll be contending quite a lot.
Yep, and they will be hoping to contend over the next few weeks as well on the DP World Tour. And we'll have a look now to this week's events. And of course, we've got a couple of events across the pond, one in Austria and the other in the Muirfield Village in Ohio for the Memorial Tournament. But we'll start off, as ever, as Steve likes to do, in chronological order. So we'll stick with the regular format, and that will be the DP World Tour event in Austria, the Austrian Open. Before James gives us a rundown of the course and then his selections, looking at the betting, you're looking at the likes of Rasmus Nergaard Peterson at the top of the betting, Jordan Smith, Haotong Lee, Joost Luiten, and Keta Nakajima up there as well as far as the betting is concerned. A bit about the track for the Austrian Open.
Yeah, the Austrian Open, well, it's quite an interesting sort of tournament, this one, going into it, because it's back on the tour for the first time since 2021. It'll be the 23rd edition of Austria's National Open. That's when it's had European/DP World Tour status. It did have a spell, 97 to 2005, when it dropped down to the Challenge Tour. Since 2010, it had been held at the Diamond Country Club, but this week's venue, it's the Gut Altentan Golf Club, Jack Nicklaus designed, in Hendorf. So that's where the first three editions of this tournament were held, 1990 to 1992. It's a par 70, 6,941 yards. So it's not a long track when you look at what the standard courses are these days on the DP and the PGA Tour. You've got 12 par 4s, 4 par 3s, and 2 par 5s. Now, the course is routed around two lakes, several streams, so it's no surprise that water comes into play on no less than 11 holes. Plenty of fairway bunkers, although the fairways are fairly generous, definitely more generous than last week's test at the Soudal Open, which was tree line. So I think maybe your bigger hitters will be liking to open the shoulders a little bit more on this one, even though there are traps to catch them if they go straight, if they go off the beaten track, into the bunkers. But I think your big hitters might have a little bit of advantage here. You're looking at the greens, they're large, they're undulating, they're well protected. So for me, approach play could be pretty crucial here. John Catlin, he's a stand-in live player these days, but he won the last edition position in 2021. He's back to try and defend his crown. Now, the weather is an interesting one for this because you've got to settle in for some rain, judging by the forecasts. Thursday, Friday, and Sunday, there's at least a 50% chance that we'll see rain on all three of those days. Saturday is the best day, sunny with some clouds, a low chance of rain, but certainly I think the conditions could be quite challenging on Thursday, Friday, and Sunday.
So it's going to make it a tricky tournament to predict, James. Not only the weather, but also the fact that, as you say, it's changed venue and we haven't had an Austrian Open for 4 years as well. So a lot to take into account ahead of this event. And how many selections have we got for the Austrian Open?
We're going for 4 selections.
Okay, 4 selections. And who is our main pick?
Main pick is Haotong Li. Now, he's one of the most informed players in the DP World Tour this season. He won the Qatar Masters in February, and he's come close to landing a second title of the year since then. Since that victory, his results: tied 41st, tied 16th, tied 9th, tied 4th, tied 51st, tied 2nd, and tied 4th. I mean, his consistency has just been fantastic, regularly challenging. But what I like about Li at the moment is how he's adapted to different challenges. Now, Lee, for me anyway, is known as somebody who gives it a good rip off the tee. So last week's Soudal Open shouldn't really have suited him on that tree line course, but he still finished tied 4th. So for me, he's showing great versatility, several strings to his bow. So I'm really liking how Lee's got that confidence back in his game. He's almost back in the top 100 of the world, not been that high since 2020. I think that's testament to how strong a season he's having. A win here would obviously see him climb further up the rankings. And you've got to remember, he's only 29 years old. Obviously, he's been around for years. He had, form trouble, injury issues. So he's still got so much of his career ahead of him. Now, the Gut Altentown Golf Club, it looks like a course I think that Lee will settle into quite nicely. Like I said before, there's a bit more room off the tee than last week, so the power of the Chinese ace, it should help him. But it's the approach play for me that really stands out this season. He's second in strokes gained approach. He's 9th in greens in regulation, so the irons have been really, really crisp. And, with these greens well protected, I know they're large, but if you miss them, you're into bunkers. I think being able to find that putting surface is key, and those two areas of Lee's game, they prove that he can do this. It's also worth noting as well that with there being 12 par 4s this week, scoring on those is crucial. Lee, well, he's second in par 4 scoring this season on the DP World Tour. So I think given the confidence that he's playing with right now, it's hard to go against him. And yeah, he gets top billing for me.
Yeah, a lot of golf fans out there would love to see Haotong Li successful when you consider all the problems that he's had to deal with injuries and the like. But back to somewhere near his best form in recent weeks. And Haotong Li is James's top tip for this week's Austrian Open. 3 more to come, James. Who's his second selection?
Yeah, we've gone for Edoardo Molinari, the veteran of the game these days when you look at him at 44 years of age. And it's been a long old time since his last victory, 2017, the Trophy Hassan. But there have been some positive signs from the Italian this season. He was 9th at the Indian Open. He was tied 6th at the Hainan Classic. He also had a top 25 at the Turkish Airlines Open. So another positive there. He's been bullet straight off the tee. He leads in driving accuracy. I know I said there's more leeway off the tee this week, but still, if you get to find the short stuff more often than not, then he's going to have a good opportunity to try and find the greens. He has been doing that well as well. The iron play has been good. He's 17th in greens regulation, so tee to green been very good from him. If he does miss a green as well, which isn't that often, but he gets up and down more often than not, he's 6th in scrambling. I think if he can have a good week on the greens, the putter, that's really been the Achilles heel for Molinari throughout his career, then I think he could be in the mix. And on the last note as well, before par 4 scoring, he's 3rd in that. So it's another tick in the box for him. Yeah, I think he could be someone to watch for this week.
Let's hope he turns up for his tee time on time after what happened with Francesco the other week on the US PGA Tour when he was late by a couple of minutes and he got penalised a shot. If anybody didn't see that, by the way, he's penalised a shot on the first and he actually birdied the first hole as well. So that kind of set him back a shot, having been late for his team time. Hopefully no such problems for Eduardo this week. So we've had Haotong Li and Eduardo Molinari, who is pick number 3, James.
It is Brandon Robinson Thompson. He's chasing his maiden DP World Tour win, but there have been plenty of positive performances this season to sort of suggest to me that a victory isn't far away. He's had top 10s in Bahrain and Joburg. He was 3rd at the Qatar Masters as well, and he was 4th in Turkey a couple of starts ago. The amounts that he's getting into contention, I've got to feel that a breakthrough isn't far away for him. He's a solid driver of the ball, as Thompson, gives it a good hit, fairly accurate. While he's been hitting the greens on a regular basis as well, he's 16th in greens and regulation. So again, tee to green, he looks like a good sort of fit for this course. He's 16th in par 4 scoring as well. So I think if he can have a good week on the greens, it could see him make that next step in his career. He can be a little bit streaky with the putter. He's had some good performances, like I've said. He's also had a few disappointing ones. But I think if he can get some early confidence, wholesome putts in the first few days, then certainly is someone I think could be challenging come Sunday.
I mean, it's a name that I haven't heard a lot about, James, but do you think, I get a sense at the moment, the DP World Tour is maybe in a sort of transitional period where we've got some of the older players who are maybe coming towards the end of their careers, and we're now starting to see more of these new names starting to make an impact kind of on a more regular basis?
Yeah, I think there's more incentives maybe with the DP World Tour with the restructuring of things that they've done with the swings they have now through the season. So this is part of the European swing at the moment. This
Mm,
tournament, you get a winner now of every swing that they have. So there's
yeah.
more money, more incentives. Also, you've got the PGA Tour cards that you have. So the top 10 at the race to Dubai standings at the end of the season. If they don't already have a PGA Tour card, then they'll get over to the US circuit. So
Mm,
I think it's always been seen for me back in the day when it was European Tour, now DP World Tour, it was a bit of a springboard, a platform to try and get yourself over to the PGA Tour. But I don't see an issue with that. I think there's got to be incentives. And yeah, I think you've definitely got more players not finding it easier because we all know it's
no.
not it's not easy to be a professional
Mhm,
golfer and get on the tour. But I think once you can get onto the DP World Tour, you can still make quite a good career for yourself, even if you don't get to the PGA, because I think the
mm.
purses, the prize money, the incentives, where you play, I think it's definitely better than what it was sort of 10 or so years ago.
And they'll have probably seen quite a few of the players who have recently gone on to the PGA Tour be successful as well and win tournaments. So that can only spur them on to big things over the next few years. So that is three of our four selections for the Austrian Open. Who's the fourth and final one, James?
Yeah, we're going with Nicholas Lemke, another player who's chasing his maiden win, but he is 41 years old. The Swede, though, he's been bubbling along quite nicely with some solid enough results this season. He's posted a top 10, top 15, top 20. It's not sparkling form, but it just feels like he's on the cusp of maybe doing something well. He was tied 17th at the Turkish Airlines Open before he then missed the cut at last week's Soudal Open, but I don't really think that course suited him with it being really tree lined, so I think a bit more freedom off the tee should help him here. When it comes to approach play, he's done really well. He's 13th in greens regulation, so he's finding the dance floor more often than not. The issue for Lemke's been the putter. It struggled to warm up when needed, but for me, he did put really, really well in Turkey a couple of starts ago. So I think if he can rediscover that kind of touch on the greens, then it could potentially happen for him this week. Like the other three selections as well, he ranks highly in par 4 scoring. He's 13th in that department. So, I think given where he is in his career at the moment, I still think that he's got something in there. Obviously, the longer you wait for that maiden win, that might not come. But I think
Mm.
Lemke certainly has the potential if it all clicks together for him, especially on the greens. Tee to green is very solid, but if he gets the putter going, he's someone to watch out for.
We just look at this sort of betting at the moment, and you see how even it is at the top of the betting in terms of just how closely matched quite a lot of these golfers are. When you've been making those selections this week, James, have you got a list of sort of 10 to a dozen and you've cut it down, or actually have those four been standout way and above everything else?
No, there's been others that have been in the thinking. just just haven't quite made it for certain
Mm.
reasons. I mean, Hoyce Loughton was one that I was looking at. Again, I think this course could quite
Yeah.
suit him, and he's been in decent form at the moment. But he's sometimes hit and miss. He sometimes throws in a miscut somewhere, or he
Mm.
started off really well last week and then faded a little bit. So that's just the slight worry for me. I had Jordan Smith. He was up there in the thinking as well. The issue for me with Jordan Smith at the minute is again he's very good at placing. He's very good at getting a top 10, but actually getting that victory, which is what we want, of course, he's just not quite doing at the moment. So there's
Mm.
just certain things about them that I didn't quite like, whether it is didn't like prices on them or just thought there was areas of the game that weren't quite there.
Yeah.
But there was certainly had to chop it down by a few players just because of this only being back on the tour for the first time since 2021.
Yeah.
The course hasn't been used for so many years. It was quite an open heat, you would say, but yeah, it took a little bit of research to chop it down to four.
We will remind you of James's 4 tips towards the end of this week's sweet spot for the Austrian Open, but it's time to turn our attentions now to the US PGA Tour. And I don't think it's being too disrespectful to the Austrian Open to say that this is the standout event of the week, especially when you look at the field as well at Muirfield Village, where they have hosted the Ryder Cup. We mentioned it earlier, of course, in the show at Dublin, Ohio, is where we are this week for the US PGA Tour. Just a reminder that SBK are running a 25% winnings boost on the Memorial Tournament this week. If you pick the winner, you can expect a 25% winnings boost exclusively from SBK. So that's another thing to consider when placing your bets for the Memorial Tournament. And before we get your selections, James, for this big event, let's just find out a little bit about the course.
Yeah, so I mean, the tournament anyway, it's the third and final player hosted event of these signature events that we've got. It's the seventh of 8 of the signature events. So you do have a 36-hole cut. So for most of the signature events, you don't have a cut, but because this is one of the 3 player hosted ones, you do have a 36-hole cut. So it's the top 50 and ties, plus any player within 10 shots of the lead, just 74 in the field. So, you've got the increased prize pot, $20 million is the prize pot, but $4 million goes to the winner. 700 FedEx Cup points to the winner as well. So there's plenty to play for. But this is at Muirfield Village Golf Club, Dublin, Ohio. It's the brainchild of Jack Nicklaus. Again, we've got 2 Jack Nicklaus courses this week. This is a par 72, 7,569 yards. You've got 10 par 4s, 4 par 3s, and 4 par 5s. So I think scoring could be interesting going into this one. But the fairways, they're fairly generous. But if you stray into the rough, then there will be problems. They do let the rough grow up to around 4 inches. It could potentially get as high as, depends how tough they want to set it out for them. So good luck trying to scramble for your par. If you're too greedy, I think, trying to get out of the rough and find the green. This course, it's hosted several events. It's hosted this event since its inception, but it's also had the 1987 Ryder Cup, the 1998 Solheim Cup. It had the President's Cup in 2013, and it also had the Workday Charity Open, if everyone remembers that, in 2020. It's only been staged once. That was the one and only edition of it, but it was also used for that one. Now, again, the weather, mentioned for the Alpine Open in Austria that there was rain. Well, it could be tough for the first 2 days. According to latest forecast, this is Thursday, the winds may be at around 14 miles per hour, while the gusts can range from 36. There's also a strong chance of rain, so that could cover it throughout the day. Friday, better conditions, but overnight rain, that could have an impact, and the winds are still expected to be around 12 miles an hour, gusts from 31. The weekend's better. The weekend's dry, sunny, but fast and firm conditions by Sunday as well. So that final round could be really, really interesting. Scheffler, of course, is the defending champion, comes in fantastic form. Solid iron players with a hot short game. That is what I'm looking for this week.
Don't think we're quite at the draw bias klaxon that Steve likes to sound on occasions,
No,
but
I don't have one of them, so it's all right.
I've got a vuvuzela probably lying around somewhere, I would have thought. But it's something to keep an eye on in terms of the weather this week. If you look at the top 6 in the betting, it shows you how strong this event is. Scotty Scheffler, Xander Schauffele, Colin Morikawa, Justin Thomas, Patrick Cantlay, and Ludwig Aubert. So all the big names, barring you would say Rory McIlroy, lining up for the Memorial Tournament this week. And if you look at the last 5 winners of the event as well, John Rahm, Patrick Cantlay, Billy Horschel, Victor Hovland, and Scotty Scheffler, shows you just what a quality field this normally is and what a hard tournament it is to win as well. James, how many are we looking at in terms of selections?
We've gone for 4 selections again, a 4-4 formation this week.
Okay, and pick number 1. Who is our main selection for the Memorial?
That's Patrick Cantlay. Now, it's been a long trophy drought for Cantlay. It was August 2022 when he last won, but I think the drought could come to an end this week. He loves this course. He's a 2-time winner. He won here in 2019 and 2021. He's also had 2 top 5s and a top 10 at this course as well. So he obviously loves getting around this track. He disappointed at the PGA on his last outing, a miscut, but his form before that was really strong. A tied 13th at the RBC Heritage, a tied 4th at the Tours Championship, and both of those were signature events. And you look at some of his other results in the signature events this season, he was tied 15th at the Century, tied 5th at the Genesis, so seems to turn up for the bigger tournaments, surprisingly, when you've got more money and more FedEx Cup points. Of course, FedEx Cup points, they're the key as well when You're looking for the race for the FedEx Cup, and also when you're looking for Ryder Cup as well. But when it comes to iron play, Cantlay, he's looked really, really sharp this season, even though he's not winning. But he's second in greens regulation. He's 10th in strokes gained approach on the PGA Tour. Although his short game stats, they're not as impressive if they have been in previous years, he is still really solid on the greens. He obviously enjoys putting on them with a success here. I do get frustrated watching Cantlay just with how slow he is, and Justin Thomas seems to have got a bit of Cantlay in him now on his putting.
Mm.
When he hovers from side to side, when
Yeah.
he's standing over it and he's going left, right, left, right, I'm just thinking just hit the putt. But if it goes in, then I don't mind because Cantlay's the selection here. But he's also Cantlay, when you look at it at this course, he's got the best cumulative strokes gained at this course over the last 5 years. So I'd be really surprised if he isn't in the mix. If there was ever a tournament where you think this could be it for Cantlay to get back into the winner's
Yeah.
circle, I think it's this one.
Yeah, the two-time winner Patrick Cantlay of the Memorial. First victory was in 2019 when he beat the field by 2 strokes, and then in 2021 he won a playoff against Colin Morikawa to win this event as well. Will he make it 3 wins at the Memorial? James certainly thinks so. So that's the first of James's 4 picks for this tournament. What's pick number 2?
Yeah, we're going for Shane Lowry. Now, he's another player that missed the cut at the PGA Championship, but I wasn't surprised at that, as it came straight after he faltered on the final round of the Truist Championship when he ended up tied second. I don't know if you remember watching that one, but it was Sepp Straka who won in the
Yeah.
end, and Shane Lowry just completely blew it over the last couple of holes. And his reaction at the end of the tournament as well, he was on the green, he was crouched down, he was head in his hands, and he was just furious. And yeah, I wasn't surprised at all to see him not perform at the PGA, especially when they made the decision not to give preferred lies on the fairway at one point after the rain they had. And I'm not sure if you saw the video, Shane Lowry as well, when he was trying to do a little approach shot into one of the greens, his club just goes straight in. I think he had a half buried ball, and then he had some expletives come out. He wasn't happy with the calls that were made. So I don't think he was quite in the right headspace to go into that tournament. He needed a little reset. He didn't play last week, so hopefully that's cleared his mind for this challenge ahead. Now, I did say that I wanted someone with a hot short game. Well, Larry has certainly got that. He's got one of the best short games in the world. He is a magician with a wedge in his hand, and I think that should help him to scramble when required. He's 20th in scrambling on the PGA Tour this season. He's 18th in strokes gained around the green, so that area's game is pretty good. His approach play has been excellent as well. He's 6th in strokes gained approach, and his general tee to green play, that's been solid. He's 2nd in strokes gained in that department. So it's all kind of bubbling up, I think, for Larry. He's been putting in some decent performances this event. You look in the signature events as well. He was 2nd at Pebble Beach. He was 7th, at the Arnold Palmer, tied 18th at the Heritage, and then that tied 2nd at the Truist. So he is turning up in the biggest events. His best finish here, that was tied 6th in 2021. I definitely think he could improve on that.
Yeah, and as you say, there have been signs, despite that frustration at the PGA Championship, there have been signs recently that Lowry is getting back to somewhere near his best. And could it be this week where he ends up back in the winners' enclosure? We shall see. The 2 picks that have gone so far then, just a reminder, Patrick Cantlay and Shane Lowry. 2 more to go. James, who's pick number 3?
Yeah, it's Denny McCarthy. Now, he's still somehow searching for his PGA Tour breakthrough, but again, there's been signs this season that suggest a win may finally happen sooner rather than later. He was tied 8th at the PGA Championship last time out. It's his best major performance since he was tied 7th at the 2022 US Open, so I think that should give him plenty of confidence. He was tied 5th here in 2022. He then lost out to Victor Hovland in a playoff a year later, so he's got really solid course form. Now, I mentioned again, you want someone who's good with a short game. Well, McCarthy, he is absolute dynamite on the greens. He is so good with a putter in hand. He's 6th in strokes game putting. He's 19th in scrambling as well. So it's further evidence of his impressive short game at the moment. The iron play as well, that's been going in the right direction, trending upwards of late. So that's a real good positive for this type of test that he's going into. It wouldn't be a surprise at all if it all suddenly clicked into gear this week. For McCarthy, it is just that mental block at times of getting over the line. He's been in contention for tournaments, just hasn't managed to do it. But I do think with his short game, with his putting, and with his irons looking quite well at the moment, he's definitely someone who has got the look of a player who is starting to believe that he can get over the line. And that tied 8th to the PGA, I think that'll do him the world of good.
I do wonder because, a lot of people will probably look and think, well, maybe one of the lesser tournaments is where he might make a breakthrough, or a player who hasn't won before will make a breakthrough. That's not always the case, because they'll go into a signature event like this with a little bit less pressure on the shoulders. Nobody really expecting them to do anything necessarily in terms of challenging for top spot. And that's sometimes where, things go in their favour. And also, I think, also, James, I don't know what you think, but playing with these very top level players is only going to bring the best out of them.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think McCarthy, whether they ask any of the top players for advice, obviously
Mm,
not on the course. Maybe they do. I mean, I'm not sure how pally that Danny McCarthy is with some of the other Americans or other players on the tour, but certainly they'll be looking at how someone like a Scheffler or a McIlroy or someone like that sort of plots their way around the course at times, picks out their shots. They'll be sort of seeing how they eye certain holes. I mean, of course, Scheffler and McIlroy can do stuff that others can't, but
mm,
I do think it will help them, and it definitely gives them confidence if they play with them. And say if they outscore them going around one of the rounds, again, that'll just bring up the belief from McCarthy and others that they belong at this level, and he certainly does belong at this level. to
mm.
to be where he's at and to challenge so much and not to have won yet is quite astounding. But you've got to think that a victory for McCarthy isn't too far away with how well he's playing.
A bit like London buses, it might be that after the first one, the second one arrives pretty shortly after. So we've had three of our four selections now for the Memorial Tournament. Who's our fourth and final pick, James?
Yeah, it's Michael Kim. Now, he showed strong form in the early part of the season. He had a run of 5 tournaments in a row where he was tied second, tied 13th, tied sixth, fourth. So he's capable of putting it all together and getting into contention. Had a bit of a wobbly time after that, an average spell. It culminated in a withdrawal from the Truist Championship. That was due to a back injury, so there was slight worries about him. And again, it was no surprise really to see him struggle at the PGA with that back issue. He was tied 55th, but the signs were much better last week at the Charles Schwab. He was tied 16th and he putted really well on the final round. He was sixth in scrambling for the week as well. You look at other stats that he had for the tournament. He was tied 13 in greens and regulation. He was in the top 10 for driving accuracy and distance. So there was plenty of positives to take from that
Mm,
display. The one downside for Kim is his record here. He's missed the cut on all 4 appearances, but he hasn't played this course since the 2020 Workday Charity Open. I think he should be better equipped for his sort of fifth crack at it this time. I think
mm,
he's obviously he had that little wobbly spell that I was mentioning, but I think the Charles Schwab just got that confidence back up. He's 13th in both scrambling and strokes gained around the green this season, so I think that bodes well. I think scrambling will be really, really key. I think you're not going to hit every green here. It's a tough course in being able to get up and down. John Rahm, when he won it a few years ago, he said he was interviewed after, and he said his short game, he said it hasn't been that good ever. He said he was
mm,
so impressed with how his short game was. He said he nearly chipped in a few times and he was putting really well. I think that's quite sort of telling from someone like Rahm, to
mm.
say, yeah, it was his short game really that kept him on. Of course, approach play, getting on the greens is key, but getting up and down if you miss them is absolutely crucial as well.
Okay, so they are the four picks then for the Memorial Tournament this week. It would be remiss of us, James, if we didn't go and look at the ones at the top of the betting and the bigger names, of course, and why we haven't selected them. We'll start off with Scheffler, who, of course, is the defending champion. Is it just a case of too short a price for Scheffler this week?
Yeah, it is. I mean,
Mm,
I think he's playing fantastically at the moment, so it's hard to go against him. But I just
yeah.
think in the field, when you've got 73 other players going against you, anything can happen. And we saw that
Mm,
last week. He had a poor second round, didn't he?
mm,
And I think if you do that, if you have like an average or a disappointing second round here, then I think with the quality of the field that it is, I think he'll be potentially out of contention. So all it takes is one poor round, but certainly his record is brilliant. He won it last year. He was third in 2023, 2021.
mm.
So he's very good around this track. So for me, that was the reason of leaving him out. But there's several others that could potentially do well. Ludwig Gobert is another one. He
Yeah.
was tied fifth here last year, but his form's just dropped off a little bit. You look at his last 3 performances: 54th, 60th, miscut. He took last week off. Yeah, I'm just not quite sure if he's potentially in the right headspace at the minute to challenge
Mm,
this week. Yeah, there was a few others that you look at and you think potentially Sepp Straka. He's another one. Obviously, he won the Tourist Championship, missed the cut at the PGA, but he was tied fifth last year as well. He's got a decent record around here. Matsuyama was another one. Again, you could
mm.
go through so many
Oh,
players,
yeah.
couldn't you,
Yeah.
down the list? I mean, Schauffele's another one. Um, you're looking at someone like a Sung Jae-im. Matt Fitzpatrick had a good performance at the
Mm.
PGA out of absolutely nowhere, and he's got a good record around this course as well. So you could make arguments for quite a few players, but yeah, the quartet I picked just for me, I thought looked like they were trending in the right direction.
Yeah, I noticed Colin Morikawa has been a two-time runner-up on this track as well at the Memorial. I mean, where do you see his game at the moment, James? I know Steve's talked about him recently, not being able to quite trust him as to how we would have done maybe a couple of years ago. How do you see him performing?
Yeah, that's the same with me in terms of Morikawa at the moment. He seems to be up there, and then he'll
Mm.
have a middling round, and then he's too far away from actually getting back into contention, or he'll
Yeah.
go and he'll finish off the tournament well, and he'll finish top tens. Yeah, for me, I just can't quite trust him being able to get over
Mm.
maybe a bit of a mental block at the moment because he was in really good form and you thought, right, this is where he's going to get the win. He was second, 10th, but then he's just started to drop off. Miscut 17th, 50th. That's his last three appearances. He's
Mm.
got a he's got an in and out record here, you would say. So he won that Workday Charity Open in 2020. He was then 48th, second, miscut, withdrawal, second. So it's very up
Mm.
and down. And I think again, that's a bit of Morikawa at the moment. It's just a little bit of inconsistency in his game and trusting him to get over the line. I wouldn't be surprised if he's up there, and I wouldn't be surprised if he
No.
wins. But for me, I just can't quite trust him to get the job done at the moment.
And we should have a quick word as well in terms of the person who's not there this week, most notably Rory McIlroy. So, he's decided to miss another of these big events. And I always wonder how much that's to do with the fact that he's having to try and get a replacement driver now and feel comfortable with it off the tee.
Yeah, maybe the replacement driver. I think he was just a bit annoyed with how it came out as well.
Mm. Yeah.
Like how it broke in the media because pretty sure I think it was listened last week. Scheffler had the same thing. Scheffler
Mm.
said
Yes.
he felt his driver going a few weeks ago, but he kind of mentally prepared for it. So I think he'd
Mm.
already had another one ready.
Yeah.
If his went or if he wanted to change it, where no one really heard about that. But then
Mhm.
everyone hears about McIlroy's non-conforming driver, and
Yeah.
the story isn't about how McIlroy coming here off the back of the Masters trying to win here, a great record. It was, oh, you've got a non-conforming driver. What do you think about that?
Mm.
And he refused the media, didn't he? After
Yeah.
the tournament, he didn't want to talk to them, and I think he's just needed a big reset, McIlroy. It's been a highly charged time for him, hasn't it, over the
Mm.
past few seasons? Obviously, getting the job done with the Grand Slam at the Masters as well. And he has said that he's going to try and sort of balance his schedule a little bit more. He doesn't want to play as much as he has been recently. And you know what? He can do that now, can't he? He's
Yeah.
done everything pretty much that he wants to do. I'm sure he said before he won the Masters, I think he said at the start of the year he had three goals for the year or for
Mm.
the rest of his career. And I think one was the Masters, one was the Ryder Cup, and I think it was winning on foreign soil, the Ryder Cup.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then I want to think the third one was it get back to world number one potentially.
Mm.
And he's not far away from doing those. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's a blow not to have him there, but I think he probably just needs a, a little bit of time to himself.
Well, one of those three has been ticked off. I'm sure the other two will probably follow suit in the coming months and years as well. But certainly no Roy McIlroy this week, but a very strong field indeed for the Memorial Tournament to look forward to on the USPGA Tour. Muirfield Village is always a fantastic venue. I'm sure it'll provide some great golf again this week. So, time to round up our tips for the two events this week. 8 tips in total from James. And we'll start off, James, with the 4 from the Austrian Open.
Yeah, we've gone for Haotong Lee, Eduardo Molinari, Brandon Robertson Thompson, and Nicholas Lemke.
And we also had 4 in the Memorial Tournament as well. And who are they, James?
They were Patrick Cantlay, Shane Lowry, Denny McCarthy, and Michael Kim.
Yeah, and just to remind you, of course, that both events will start on Thursday. Of course, the Austrian Open first on the DP World Tour and then the Memorial Tournament in Ohio. Should be a cracking week of golf. Much to look forward to over the coming weeks, of course. We'll be heading into the month of June very shortly. We've got the US Open to look forward to there, James, as well. Anybody on your radar in terms of the US Open at the moment who's performing well and you think actually could be worth a look at Anti-Post?
I like Shane Lowry going into that US Open. Again, I think he's shown the signs. Obviously, being a Ryder Cup year as well, but I definitely think that he's got something in him. Obviously, there's the Open, and it's back to Royal Portrush where he won the Open. But I just don't think he'll be able to replicate that. I don't think he'll win sort of another title at the Portrush. But I do think the US Open, he's got the game for US Open because they set it up so difficult, don't they? The US Open courses, and it's all about great short game, getting up and down, holding the putts. And for me, Larry ticks quite a lot of boxes, so he's definitely someone that's on the radar.
Well, a big thanks to James for all his efforts this week. Don't forget, of course, Dave Clark and Steve Palmer will be back next Tuesday on the Racing Post YouTube channel to preview a triple header next week. It's the Canadian Open on the PGA Tour, the KLM Open on the DP World Tour, and Live Golf Washington, D.C. to also look forward to. Just a reminder as well that SBK are running that 25% winnings boost on the Memorial Tournament this week. If you pick the winner, you can expect a 25% winnings boost exclusively from SBK. Make sure you join Dave and Steve next week. In the meantime, like, comment, share, and subscribe. And please remember to gamble responsibly.